My name is Major Mark Callan, and I'm an Airfield Operations Officer. I'm going to talk to you today about some interesting stuff. First of all, just by kind of show us cell phones. How many of us have cell phones in the audience today? Lift them up. I want this to be like a Bruce Springsteen concert here right now. Okay, all right, cool. A lot of you. Excellent. Yeah, waving back and forth. Beautiful. All right, so I want to talk about the power of blockchain, which is an interesting thing to talk about. I had debated between that and then giving you like a dissertation level thesis on like Roman hieroglyphics for 2 hours, but they told me I could do that. So we're going to talk about blockchain. But before I do that, I'm going to talk about some appointments that I had to go to last week, which admittedly I have been putting off because probably like the rest of you in here, I hate appointments and I hate paperwork and I hate lines. Yeah, if there's a person who actually likes standing in line at the DMV, please raise your hand. I see one, and you're sick. Okay, so the first trip was to the medical group to basically go to an appointment. You know the deal when you first go there. You go in there, and then they say, "Hey, sir, please take the clipboard." You take the clipboard. They say, "Okay, sit down, go over there, start filling it in." And you're like, "Of course, like the good patient I am, I'm definitely going to do that." So you sit down, you start writing stuff down. You say, "Name, Mark Callan. Date of birth, May 14th. What type? Red. Am I pregnant? Not usually." And as I filled out this information, I realized something. It's kind of weird that the clinic asks me for this info every single time I come in. I mean, the clinic has probably every single X-ray, MRI, and/or CT scan and stool sample that I've ever donated to the hospital. They probably have a record of that. They probably have every single appointment that I've ever gone to there from my initial PHA in 2012 to that other appointment where I had to get some antibiotics for some stuff. What it boils down to is you end up going in there and doing paperwork. After you submit your paperwork to the front desk, then the nurse takes you back and she asks you all the same questions and she charts that information. And then the doctor comes in. He asks all the same questions, and then he charts that information. And instead of spending time with my clinician and my doctor talking about the stuff that is wrong with me, what I end up doing is I end up filling out medical paperwork next to my doctor. And I sometimes call this the Twitter approach to medical health care because there's a lot of typing involved, but it's tough to discern whether anything really happens in the real world. But the point is that when you go into the med group, you go there to get medical treatment. You go there to see somebody who's going to talk to you face to face, right? So after the med group is done, I went over to finance, talked to them. In a post-COVID world, it's difficult to talk to anybody in finance. Oftentimes you end up submitting a ticket. So in my experience, submitting finance tickets goes something like this. I file a ticket. Technician reviews ticket. Technician sees that I have not uploaded the correct paperwork, which I did not know existed. And then they close the ticket, because obviously the problem is solved. And I open another ticket. I upload the documentation that's been required, and the technician takes a look, and they note that the paperwork is from my prior base, and the problem is from this base. So because there's a mix-up in the paperwork, they have to unfortunately close my ticket. So that's 2 tickets submitted, that's 0 problems solved. Now I'm sure that there are many of you in here that identify with this. We go about a lot of our military lives from appointment to appointment, from line to line, trying to track down lost paperwork. And frankly, it's pretty annoying. But the root cause of this problem aren't doctors, aren't nurses, aren't finance technicians. The root cause of this problem are the systems that those people have to deal with. And that's what we're here to address today. Because those big, siloed, unnetworked systems don't talk to one another. They don't care about one another. If we have a problem that involves a combination of medical and finance and manpower, we gotta like physically walk our paperwork from one place to the other, or email, or God forbid, fax our stuff from one place to another. And this is exhausting and it's time consuming, quite literally, to the point where when we joined the Air Force, after we receive our uniform, they should probably issue us like a personal secretary to follow us around and file all of our paperwork. So how do we solve this problem? Well, I think we can start by looking to the small European nation that is nestled right there in the Baltic Sea, the nation of Estonia. It's a weird place to go, I know it is, but just come along with me. It's a nation of 1.3 million people, and it's a technologically sophisticated nation that uses an electronic decentralized ID system. Their national IDs actually look a lot like your CACs. They got a picture of them right on the front with chips, just like ours. And they use their smart ID system to do all sorts of fun stuff, like automatically fill out paperwork and file their taxes in a few simple clicks. So, in addition to the digital IDs, however, the Estonians do something very special. They have basically a system that is a decentralized blockchain network that they run all their government applications on. It's called the KSG blockchain. And guess what, guys? It works. It works really well for what it does for a country of 1.3 million people. In fact, annually, Estonia saves 1,400 years of working time and 2% of their GDP just by using blockchain. Yeah, he gets it. They literally save 1,400 years for every year of work they do. That's crazy. 2% of your GDP. There are some countries out there that spend 2% of their GDP on their national defense. I mean, not America, but some people. And you know what? 2% of your GDP is a lot of money as well. If we could do that in the Air Force, it'd be groundbreaking. So, I think much like Estonia, the Air Force could, in fact, run its medical, legal, and professional administration on a blockchain system. Every document that makes you could be in one place on a blockchain that the Air Force runs. And on top of that blockchain network, you could build apps like MyFitness and MyPay that draws information from that blockchain, and everything's already pre-filled in, and there's no more waiting in lines because it is. The sum total would be a smart network that would be able to take all those pieces of papers, the pieces of paper in finance, the pieces of paper in NPF, the pieces of paper in the dental clinic, which for some reason, their systems can't talk to the other med-group systems, and they can't talk to the VA systems. You can take all of those pieces of paper and you can coalesce them into one digital identity that represents you. And that's pretty neat. So, some of you might ask, but Mark, what would it take to make a blockchain network? That's a great question, and we'll address that. It takes 4 things. The first thing we already have. We have a CAC. So the CAC has your public key information on it. It's got some private and public certifications, and it proves that you are you every time that you access a system. The second thing you need is blockchain. Not one that you use to make money like Bitcoin. Those are very resource intensive. What you need is a blockchain that's configured for government administration, like Estonia's KSG blockchain. Now, for those of us who are a little hazy on how blockchain works, it kind of goes a little something like this. I like to think of it as a physical block here, and then you fill it up with information, and then you stamp it, seal it digitally, and then you put another block on top of it. And you keep filling these blocks and stamping and sealing them until they are a chain of blocks that contain information, or a blockchain. Now, that information is cryptographically sealed, and it's kind of really hard to tamper with. It's kind of like almost, writing in a notebook and pen, but digitally. On page 1 of your notebook, you have the oldest notes there. And you know what? It's hard to erase a pen, isn't it? So if you go to page 1, there's always the same information on page 1 every time you go back to page 1, because you can't erase it. Oh, that's similar to how a blockchain works, but digitally. So one might say that a blockchain is very similar to a secretary, right? And one might also say that a network of blockchain, or a decentralized blockchain network, is like an entire team or an entire room of secretaries just working for you. And that's pretty cool. So the information that these secretaries basically log is logged into timestamp files, which is super helpful when you need to retrieve and find out what happened on this day. So when one secretary takes your information, all the secretaries have it instantaneously. And this is a good thing, because sometimes your secretary gets sick. Sometimes your secretary might lose your paperwork because you happen to forget that it's her birthday every year. Sometimes, your secretary gets distracted because they hear you mention that cereal is actually a soup, and then they completely lose track of what they were doing. For the record, I think that all cereals are soup, but not all soups are cereals. I'm not going to have a chocolate flavored clam chowder anytime soon. So the information that the secretaries are filing is important stuff, like your x-ray, important professional information, like how many hours you flew last month, or financial information, like your pay stubs or your BAH, stuff that you really don't want to lose, but that you need access to. These important documents are stored as tokens that have no money or fungible value. That is to say, they are non-fungible tokens. Now, these tokens are pretty similar to those infamous Bored Ape JPEG NFTs that some of you may or may not have purchased, and the same NFTs which caused the financial ruin of many a millennial. Same ones, except we don't use NFTs to track original artwork. In this case, we use the NFTs to track your original paperwork, like when you graduated from high school, when you graduated from DMT, your last PT test. All of these become original NFTs. And that lets us reference them, make sure they're the original, and then we don't have to worry about duplicates or fakes or somebody stealing them. It's impossible. So, after a blockchain and after the CAC, you need a third thing. And that's a way to get information onto the blockchain. Okay, so a lot of you got phones, right? How many have smartwatches? Okay, a lot of you. Okay, that's good. How many of you have heard that the Space Force is giving like a smart ring or a smart watch to every person in the Space Force? Y'all heard that? Well, that smart ring, that smartwatch, that's an oracle. It measures your biometric data, and then it makes it a digital, and then it puts it on a blockchain. So when I walk around with this watch, it measures my heartbeat. And then that heartbeat can be uploaded to a blockchain and into an NFT, maybe labeled medical folder. And then all of my medical information can be uploaded to there. My doctor can look at it with my permission at any time, right? So the fourth and last thing that you need is, it's kind of like a digital backpack. So I'm kind of quoting Evan McMullen, who's the co-founder of Disco.xyz and her team. But this digital backpack essentially is, it's like a backpack for all of your passwords, all of your certs, all of your digital keys that make you you. And it kind of works like a master key and a passport all at the same time. So when you're basically like going from database to database, you need a way to get through there, right? Otherwise it's you physically typing it, right? That doesn't make information transport very seamless. Basically now you're still back to walking your information all over the place. For every door that you have to get through, your digital backpack has the password to get through that door. And that can be pretty helpful when you have to deal with medical, deal with finance, deal with the VA, deal with harm, maybe all on the same day. So the sum total of these all together can do some pretty cool stuff. So with this network, a person can set up a smart contract that updates their VAH when they PCX from one base to the other. What that means to you is, you don't have to worry about financial inbrief, and you don't have to worry about updating your financial paperwork. You set it up beforehand, you physically move your phones, your tablets, your watches, they track where you go, and they say, oh, he's gotten to the zip code that he's supposed to PCS to. I will automatically update his paperwork and his VAH rate. That saves you time, and therefore it saves you money as well. You can have, essentially, a secure and remote way to talk to your doctor whenever you have private things come up that you need antibiotics for. You can have a smartwatch that talks to your jet every time that you get ready to take off, and that watch could log your flight hours and do all of that without any help or any other office. It's kind of like a digital I love me binder that follows you wherever you go, automatically updates, and helps you out whenever you got work to do. That's what blockchain could do for all of us if the Air Force started using a blockchain network. If it was done correctly, lines would go out the window. The days of us waiting for a callback when it's our turn to go downstairs to the MPF desk, over. Going to the back of the line just to get to the front of the line just to find out that you have the wrong form, over. Losing your paperwork, or having the Air Force lose your paperwork, over. So I'm here because I think blockchain could literally change the way that we live our lives in the Air Force. And I think it could give us back a lot of our time. Because at the end of the day, a lot of us just want to do our job. But I think that each one of you most likely has an idea that's equally as good as mine. In fact, I know the odds are pretty good. An example of this would be Billy Mitchell, for instance. Billy Mitchell, he was a guy who realized the power of powered aviation, if you will. And he noticed that after he met two bicycle brothers working on Dayton, Ohio, Wilbur and Orville, he's like, hey, you guys are onto something. You know, he thought that powered aviation was so important that he staked his entire career on it, and eventually turned that cutting-edge technology back then into an entirely new branch of the armed forces, the Air Force. So that's what he did with his interesting idea. I just told you about my interesting idea. What are you going to do with your interesting idea? Thank you.